security officers of Reddit. So, where are the hidden cameras? Really? What have you seen on those backroom monitors you will never forget? Whether it's sexy, violent, scary, or maybe even paranormal. I worked at a large retail establishment for many a year and the highlight reel of the security team was awesome. Weirdest thing was two brothers shopping in electronics together, not looking particularly suspicious. I mean, these were your typical no homo type dudes. Khaki cargo shorts, backwards hats, Abercrombie shirts. This was 2008-ish. One perched down to look at something on the bottom shelf and the other one came up, put his hand on the crouching guy's shoulder, and fully puts his hand down the back of the guy's pants. Bro number 1 is unfazed. Bro number 2 steps back and inhales deeply of the backdoor essence of bro number 1. They don't buy anything and then leave nonchalantly. TL. Dr. Duda bros come to store, dipstick each other. I used to work security at a amusement park before I got into EMS. The craziest thing I ever saw was someone being stabbed while I watched from the video room. I of course called out for my other officers that were patrolling to get their code 3 and called the police. From what we gathered after the incident it was a gang retaliation. Edit. To all those wondering what amusement park I worked at, I cannot say due to a NDA I signed when I was hired on. I can say that it is in Central California. As for the person who was wondering what M stands for, it's Emergency Medical Service. Funniest thing. At around 2 AM on a weekend, random dude walking down the street with no shirt on, systematically going to all the trees along the road and hugging them passionately before a random motorist catches his attention. That is, shirtless guy charges out onto the street in front of the car, causing the driver to slam on his brakes. He then proceeded to drop to all fours and mock charge the vehicle. The terrified motorist throws their car into reverse, turns completely around and speeds off. Shirtless guy continues to hug trees. At that point I called the police. I worked for security when I was in college. Girl I had been seeing came and visited me at my office since I was working a 2400 to 0800 shift. She was swinging by to say goodbye because it was the end of the semester and she was moving back home for the summer. We kissed, said our goodbyes, etc. and she left. Well, not 2 minutes after leaving she shows up at the entrance to one of the dorms that my office covers. Guy comes to the door, they make out briefly, then disappear inside. She didn't leave before the end of my shift. Felt bad, man. We had one hidden in the cash counting room. The cash supervisor was stealing and hiding the money in her fat rolls. We got it on camera and had her come to the office. She had to lift up her shirt and pull all the money out of her rolls. In most retail stores there are maybe 2 people watching the floor. I worked for a large department store and they had 1 person watching the cameras and 1 person walking the floor in plain clothes. They mostly rely on tip-offs from regular employees for suspicious people. Cameras are mostly only useful after they detain someone and need to go back and gather evidence. Just because you see a lot of cameras in a store doesn't mean you're being watched. Truly hidden cameras don't work as a deterrent for shoplifting, so they are rarely used outside of watching registers and cash drop points for internal theft. I don't know about cameras, but as someone who does network security, let me tell you, everything can be seen. Every site you visit, every email you open, every picture you look at. There are tools that can recreate whatever image or file you pulled off the internet. As for what I have seen, random weird Google searches including porn and lots of emails. I have seen emails about people cheating on their partners to the results of the doctor's visit about a bladder infection. Everything you do on a computer in most companies can be seen. Working at small casino, I was an assistant manager, not on duty. Some Darwin Award recipient tried to drive his Harley through the casino. It wasn't a very big place, Indian casino, so he thought he could make it from the back door to the front before anyone caught him. He didn't make the tight turn between the slots and ended up on his side. Best part, all the male security guards froze, and the lone female, 6 feet 4 inches 280, basically jumped on top of the guy and sat on him until everyone came to help. Can't believe I wasn't on duty that day. At least I didn't have to fill out the paperwork. I'm a former supervisor of security for the US Bank Tower of downtown Los Angeles. Let me start off by saying that there are no secret cameras. All cameras are in plain sight. For the ladies of Reddit, unfortunately it's true. You are being watched, judged and scrutinized by security if you are good looking. If you are particularly attractive, you will be followed around using a PTZ, moving camera. Men too. If the officer is gay, myself, most of the time we observe people falling and laugh until we get tired of you. Then we call for someone to assist you. If you are doing something bad or illegal around a site guarded by security and you get a tad anxious because you see a camera, have no fear. The likelihood anyone is watching is about 10%. Most of the time just watch Netflix. When I was a security guard at an art museum, I once witnessed a young well-dressed man do something that still haunts my dreams. He stood alone in a gallery, hand on chin, studying a very large, textured painting for quite some time. This is normal. People do that. What people do not do is calmly remove their hat and rub the top of their head against the artwork, which he did. He then replaced his hat and calmly strolled out of the gallery. I've never been more confused in my life. I worked security for 1 month. Friend ran the company while I was in college. I needed some extra cash, so went to work. My job was guarding a construction site to make sure no materials were stolen. I had a small guard shack with 1 CCTV/3 cameras to monitor. The setup was terrible, and they weren't ISO. Nothing was visible at night on them, which meant I had to patrol the area. The boring part about the job was it was at this point an empty construction site. There was a single backhoe and a 30 feet long ditch. No building materials, lumber, tools, etc. on site except the backhoe. My logbook each night was just myself writing about a cat venturing too close to the ditch and wondering if I should wait for backup to proceed with scaring the feline intruder away. Eventually quit due to boredom. While I was not a loss prevention officer, I was good friends with some of them during my first job at a grocery store. One evening, I was working in the back room, setting it up for our Saturday morning deliveries, when I hear the PA tell me to ring 129, our loss prevention office. I call them up, and they ask me to head over there immediately. Being around 16, I thought I was going to get to take part in some kind of stake stealer takedown, so I made my way to the little closet they occupied as quickly as possible. The guys were all crying from laughing, and then they hit play on one of the CCTVs. My co-worker, another youngin, was filmed walking down the aisles, picking his ass. They zoomed in and confirmed his hand was on the inside of his boxers, walking to the end of the aisle, looking around, then smelling his fingers. At Walmart, somebody called us and told us that we may want to check out the paint aisle. I'm not sure if anybody is aware of the paint shelf at Walmart's, but it's a big industrial-sized shelving unit designed to hold the weight of all the paint in a hoe. On camera you could just see that a bunch of paint on the bottom shelf was moved, so we decided to go check it out. Upon entering the aisle and looking on the bottom shelf, 2 gay guys, one giving the other guy hardcore BJ. We were too flabbergasted to even say anything. We kind of just walked away and decided to forget we ever saw anything. I used to live in this little apartment that had 2 security guys, basically these 2 older guys that would sit at the front desk for about half the day, handling deliveries and keeping hobos out of the building. After getting to be great friend with one of them, who was seriously about 75 at the time this happened, he told us about an event that occurred a year prior. The other guard had left some doors open overnight, and a homeless guy had wandered in and frightened one of the female residents. She ran up and told JP, the security guy on duty. JP ran down to get him out and sees that the homeless guy has a knife in hand, so the 75-year-old, incredibly sweet guy tackles the homeless guy, shoving his nose into the floor and breaking it, straddles him, unknifes him, gets his hands behind his back, still on the floor, and while holding the guy down with one hand and straddling him, calls the cops, sits there and waits until the cops get there. Boom. Ever hear of security closets on an elevator with 2-way mirrors? My girlfriend and I were riding a mall elevator with mirrored walls. We started making out when the doors closed. Just kidding, like, we were teens. But when I put my hand up her shirt we hear 3 loud knocks and we quickly straightened up, scared like. I looked around at the mirrors, thought it was just a coincidence, laughed, and we started doing it again. Again, 3 knocks, but much louder and slower. That was enough to get us to leave the elevator. We hadn't pressed a floor for the elevator to move, so the knocking wouldn't be from any obvious mechanical movement. I've always thought it would be crazy for the mall to have a false back with room for a security guard, but has anyone heard of this? The mall was an upscale mall where a recent upsurge in theft was occurring. Recently, some security and police officers got in trouble for using a camera installed at the top of the Parliament building in Quebec City to spy on couples having fun in a hotel across the street. Could not find an article in English about it, but the story is that the camera was controllable from 2 separate desks, the security desk and the provincial police desk. A security guy whose contract was not renewed whistle blew the whole thing, and of course the security blamed the police and vice versa. I'm a patrol guard in a small town in rural Australia. For a while I had a guy in a Grim Reaper costume and a knife pop up in random places. I would see him in several places in fairly quick succession. And there is no possible way he could have walked to these places quicker than I could have driven there. There was never any cars around for him to get in. Always in really weird places too. As a small female guard on my own, it was a little scary. But that was in my first few months. I've seen heaps of crazy things now, and I'm quite desensitized. In the psych hospital I saw terrible things, PPL eating poop, gouging their arms, legs and each other with makeshift blades, eating hair. That place was haunted too. Never believed in ghosts till I worked hospital. I mean never. I made fun of the shows always saying, why they there at night? It's the wind. I believe now big time. The psych hospital was ran by nuns in the early 1900s, and you'd catch a nun wandering around on camera once in a while, or you'd see windows open, or we had every car in the parking lot have their alarm go off. Very creepy. I once had to call the police on a very nice Audi pulling up in a restricted area. I gave him a few minimum to see if he would leave. When I checked the video I noticed someone getting out of the back seat of his car, standing up and doing some stretching. At first glance I thought it was a chick, but nope, naked skinny dude. Then a very muscular guy got out of the back seat as well and put his shirt on. Looked like he paid for a little nookie and got caught by the police. I was in the narcotics vault in a hospital once to work on a computer. There was room for 2 people inside. One had to leave where I could work. There were cameras at every angle. Women, or men too, for that matter, were prohibited from wearing skirts because there were multiple cameras on the floor to watch if they dropped something and put it in their pocket. I was told they recorded 24/7, but were not examined unless some shortage in drugs were found. I used to work for an apartment complex as a leasing agent. Our maintenance people generally watched the videos, but we eventually all got to see it. The camera overlooked only the parking lot. In the video you see a car pulling in, and a person getting out of the passenger's side and walking over to the driver's side. The door opens, and there is some movement. After a moment, you realize that they are doing it right there in the parking lot with the door open. Why not just close it? That apartment complex had so many weirdos that in hindsight this wasn't really that surprising. I should have known to quit when I first started, and they told me that once there was a hostage situation, but that the guy still lived there. Perhaps they were shoplifting, but in such a way that you don't notice him putting the item down his pants because you're too busy wondering what exactly the guy's doing.